So today's video is going to be quite different from the others because it's more of a free-form review. Basically, recently I discovered a little article in the Washington Examiner by writer Dan Hannan called How Capitalism Will Save Endangered Species. And it's, well now, quite wonderful. So I thought I would share it with you, doing a little reading, just pointing out a few little minor errors they may have made in the ideas of this article. So, let's go. Not long ago, a new variety of orchid was discovered at the Newmarket Racecourse in Suffolk, England. The track's managers were horrified at first. When an endangered plant is found on your land in England, eco-regulators seized control, and this flower was apparently the only one of its kind in the world. So, first you've got the old eco-warriors coming in, seizing control. Oh yeah, those evil environmentalists trying to keep you from making a species extinct. They're attacking your profit margins. Oh, what horrors. So you've got that straw man there. Then, of course, we've got the actual science of this. The orchid in the Newmarket Racecourse is the lizard orchid, Himantoglossum hircinum. I think I pronounced that right. This is not a species that is only found in the Newmarket Racecourse in Suffolk, England. It's found in some parts of southern England. The largest population is actually in Kent. And it's also found all over Europe and North Africa, from Spain to the Balkans. So actually, it's not as much of a endangered species and a unique species as this article makes out. That's not necessarily a slight on the point they're going to make, but it does sort of undermine the article's overall legitimacy and accuracy and dedication to science. But the Jockey Club came up with an ingenious defence. If the orchid truly was unique, it argued, and if it flourished only on ground that had been churned up by horses' hooves for the better part of 400 years, then surely the correct course was to maintain the usual habitat. Now, that's a fair point, because this is what ecologists often find is the way that land has been kept historically is the best for certain species. You find this a lot in heathlands, that the old ways of cutting down bracken, for instance, for horse feed, not horse feed, no, nothing can eat bracken, it's poisonous, for bedding for horses, actually kept the heath healthy. And now we've stopped doing that, then the heaths are getting overrun with bracken. So that's a fair point. Okay, so then later they just go on and have a bit about how Charles I became the only reigning monarch to ride a winning horse at the races, and it's just like, oh, we need to put in a bit of history because we want to keep the history buffs interested. This article is not written for scientists, because if you go over with it with the slightest comb of scientific insight, it all falls apart. So here we go. I thought of the Newmarket when I read the United Nations report claiming that 1 million species faced extinction as a result of population growth, the exploitation of resources, and capitalism in general. Now notice how they put population growth first, because obviously, these are the sorts of people who are like, trying to sort of emphasize, it's population growth, that's the threat. And then exploitation of resources, and then capitalism in general. But it's population growth, because the thing is, when criticizing population growth, you go for what is inherently a sort of a bit of an imperialist attitude, because it's like, well, in the West we have 1 kid, 2 kids, in India, they have 12 kids. What is this? Except for the fact that actually 1 American kid basically has a bigger carbon footprint than an Indian family with 12 kids, because of capitalism. Because of the consumerism that 1 kid does. He's going on holiday to Disney World and, all the video games and car journeys and all that stuff, okay? That's actually that's having a bigger environmental impact than our family. So it's really not a case of population growth so much. That's a bit of a fallacy there. But, I should continue, because I'm getting a little hooked up on, their use of population growth is like it's a bad thing. Thanos did nothing wrong sort of thing. So, although the figure has been uncritically relayed by broadcasters, a moment's thought should make us suspicious. For one thing, we have been here before. In 1980, for example, the Jimmy Carter administration distributed to foreign governments a report claiming that in the year 2000, 2 million species would be wiped out. So, okay, the Jimmy Carter report, which was called the Global 2000 report, which came out in 1980, actually said that between 0.5 and 2 million species could go extinct by the year 2000. And a lot of this is due to the uncertainty we have with the number of species that actually exist in this world. So the estimates. So at the moment we have 1.4 to 1.8 species. 1.4 to 1.8 million species have been identified on planet Earth. However, the total number could just be 2 million. You know, we could be almost there, or it could be 100 million. Okay. The rate of extinction is also uncertain because it could be between 0.01% of species in the world go extinct every year, or it could be 0.1%. So, if we assume that there are 100 million species in the world, and that they are going extinct at a rate of 0.1% per year, 100,000 species would die out every year. Thus, 2 million species would go extinct in the 20 years between 1980 and the year 2000. And it's an estimate. It's not necessarily accurate. It's the upper limit. It's like, this is what happens. This could happen. This could be the greatest estimate. And, you know, if they were wrong, because it then says, in fact, by 2010, there have only been 872 documented extinctions. So firstly, those are documented extinctions. We do not know what species we are killing because it's a shortfall. It's what's referred to as a Linnaean shortfall. We do not identify species at the rate that they are going extinct because there are just so many species. So many species of beetles, so many species of bacteria and flies and all sorts of little creatures. You know, we have a fairly good idea of the number of species of birds and mammals, but for loads of other phyla and taxa, you know, we have no idea. So really, I think this is very much sort of like, oh, you know, they did something wrong in the 1980s, so, you know, it's all nonsense now. And it's like, well, no, that we've got better estimates now. Okay, the fact that we're now predicting that 1 million species face extinction, you know, that's firstly more accurate from the perspective of we know what those 1 million species are, and given that there's only about 1.4, 1.8 million species have actually been identified, that's a blimey lot of identified species that could be going extinct. You know, if we assume that there's only 2 million species in the world, that's half of them. So that's not great. And also, you know, yeah. So what if the estimate's a bit wrong? You know, science marches on. Okay, you know, not everything has been right. You know, the theory of evolution, when it came out, you know, there were aspects of that were wrong. You know, Darwin thought that bears would evolve into whales. You know, that's not how things have turned out when we looked at the fossil record. You know, science marches on, and I think trying to say, oh, none of this, it's just basically like climate change denial, and it's stupid. Anyway, must hurry on. It is possible, of course, that additional species are being eliminated before they can be classified, though not anything remotely like the scale suggested here. As I said, yes, that could very much be the scale that we're looking at. There are varieties of bacteria, for example, that exist only in a cave or in one grove. If this is what we mean by species, then their extinction coming through tiny environmental changes is presumably a common event, with or without human agency. So, okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So firstly, we've got, oh, you know, there's bacteria, little bacteria. Oh yeah, so you say there's 100 million species, but you're just talking about little bacteria in little groves. I'm like, yeah, but those little bacteria actually matter. You know, they're important for their ecosystems. You know, that's how eutrophic cascades and all that stuff works. You know, it goes out of a food chain, and that bacteria might be really important for some little amoeba that's eaten by some worm or something. You know, and then eventually that works its way up. And you know, ecosystems are so complex. You can't just say, no, losing the odd species it's fine. And yes, admittedly, species go extinct. Extinction is a perfectly natural phenomena. But the current rate of extinction is predicted to be between 1,000 and 10,000 times greater than it is naturally, as observed in the fossil record and through history. So, if, you know, yes, yeah, yes, extinction is natural, but there is incredibly powerful evidence that human agency, is what is causing all of that stuff, okay? So, yeah. And then, you can tell these are people who are not environmentalists or ecologists. This, however, is not what most of us understand by the loss of biodiversity, but it literally is. The loss of biodiversity means the loss of the diversity of species. So, if a number of species are dying out, that is a loss of biodiversity. That's just definitions. That's just look it up in a dictionary. But they're trying to appeal to a sort of very basic audience here, because they're saying, we think, rather, of species failing to survive contact with Homo sapiens. We think polar bears and tigers going the way of Galapagos tortoises and Tasmanian tigers. And yeah, that's a very simplistic way of looking at species extinction. Actually, a lot of the extinction is going on with little animals. It's your amphibians, it's your beetles, it's all your little things, and really the big animals, they're just the things that people look at. They're they're keystone species, so they can be important because they, have the trophic cascades. They control a lot of the movement of energy through the system. They're important, but that doesn't mean that the others are just nothing. It all matters, okay? And then, but it gets worse, because not only do they say, it doesn't matter, bacteria are dying out, whatever, as long as the tigers and polar bears are still here. Because then they say, that would be indeed depressing if it were happening. But it isn't, not in the way that is claimed. There are 5 times as many polar bears now as there were 60 years ago. Okay, so there's 2 things here. One is, yes, the IUCN has reported that polar bear populations are increasing. Now, there's one thing is we are now able to count more polar bears because we have better technology. When they started counting polar bears in the 1960s or 70s, they didn't have drones, they didn't have the money to send helicopters out. So, they were basing it mainly on estimates and the polar bears they could see in areas of land like Greenland and Canada. So that's one thing. But then there's another thing is that, the reason that polar bears are increasing is because, up until 1963, you could hunt polar bears. And then, that got banned, and there were various different, legislations to stop people from hunting polar bears. And guess what? When you stop killing an animal, it actually increases in population. And that's great. That's how conservation works a lot of the time. But there's what is called extinction debt. So yes, the polar bears are increasing because they aren't being killed anymore. But at the same time, you've also got the ice caps melting, which now means that there's less food for them. So yes, they're increasing, but you're also now getting a lot more unhealthy bears because there's more of them who aren't being killed by people, but they're running out of food because there's not enough food left. And so it's really undermining, what the science says and, what will happen in the future if the future climate change is to continue in its trajectory. I should also point out that the website they link for this is a climate change denial website. So, there you go. Climate change denial, capitalism, best friends, Then they say the number of tigers has risen by 1/3 over the past decade. Yes, because that's how conservation works. I should also point out that polar bears and tigers, as I said, keystone species, really popular, really good for ecotourism. There is a big capitalist encouragement for keeping things like tigers alive because you can send a bunch of tourists into India, they get to see tigers, make loads of money. But that is not necessarily going to save the species that matter the most. And I said, yes, tigers and polar bears are important. But, there are lots of other species which aren't nearly as charismatic, which are just as important. And if we just take this capitalist approach that, we'll protect them because they give tourism, then that's not going to be enough to save the world, really. And now we get to my favourite sentence in this entire thing, which sort of really pushed me towards making this video. As for the giant tortoises and Tasmanian tigers, modern science is close to resurrecting them, decades after the last of their kind perished. It's brilliant. It's just, oh yeah, what if extinction didn't have to be forever? What if we could bring them back? And it's like, yeah, okay, great. So, firstly, as I say, modern science is close to resurrecting them. Is it though? Okay, Tasmanian tigers, we do not have much in the way of viable species to carry them. Closest relative is, I think, the Tasmanian devil, and that is an endangered species in and of itself. We're too busy making sure they don't die of facial tumours to try and resurrect their long-dead cousin. Yes, giant tortoise, we do have DNA. Yet again, another endangered species. I presume they're talking about the Pinta Island tortoise, which was what Lonesome George was. And yes, we have related tortoises, and we could, try to clone him or, do some genetic stuff because we've got his DNA. But, the other Galapagos tortoises are quite endangered too. And do you know how many individuals of any of these species you'd need to resurrect to make a viable population? Okay, we've brought some species back, a lot of birds actually, like pin pigeons and Mauritius kestrels from a very small founder group, but a lot of species, when we realised that the northern white rhino were dying out, we had a couple of individuals, but they all sort of started to perish, and what can we do? Yes, we might clone a couple of Tasmanian tigers and giant tortoises, but that's not going to get them back to the levels they were on Tasmania and Pinta Island respectively. I think I got that around the room. And another thing, we are really crap at cloning animals, okay? Only one extinct animal has been properly cloned, the Pyrenean ibex. It died out in, I think, the year 2000 or 2001. We cloned it in the year 2003, and it lived for 10 minutes and died, okay? That is the one time we have successfully cloned an extinct species. We've had a bit of progress recently with mouth-brooding frogs, but still not managed to bring them through to, I think, tadpoles. So really, to say, oh yeah, we can clone them all, it'll be fine, we'll just clone them. It's like, that's not how it works, because, it's so hard and we're not nearly there enough. And there's a lot of stuff in this article about how, future technology will solve it, and I'll get into how that's a really rubbish argument. And finally, I want to talk about from the perspective of this being capitalist. Capitalists cloning animals. We've got a movie about that, haven't we? A series of films. No, I mean, obviously, I'm actually kind of in favour of the idea of cloning things like woolly mammoths to bring back an extinct ecosystem, the mammoth steppe, to keep permafrost in the ground. Of course, these people don't believe in climate change, so they probably wouldn't see any purpose in this. But if you're a capitalist and you've just cloned an extinct animal and there's some rewilding program, you're going to be like, oh, that'll be $2 billion for my woolly mammoth, please. You want your program? I sign the check up. If you let the capitalists have the power to clone extinct animals, they're gonna just make money out of them, because that's all they do. That's what they do with everything. Okay, so capitalism is not solving this. As a brief interlude, we've got a little related article. AOC blames climate change on capitalism. She's right. Okay. Which brings me to the error that lies behind not only this report, but modern ecological thinking. Yes, this is a genius journalist telling ecologists how we're going wrong. Someone who doesn't understand how biodiversity loss, we're doing it wrong, okay? Doesn't understand estimates, we're doing it wrong. Namely, the idea that economic growth is bad for the environment. It is. Tigers are doing better than lions, but not as well as wolves. Okay, so populations are increasing, wolf populations are increasing, lion populations are decreasing. However, okay, tiger populations, about 4,000. Lions, 20,000, okay? There are, 5 times as many lions as there are tigers. So, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that Africa, low-income country. Okay, Kenya, Tanzania, low-income countries, okay? Lots of lions, okay? India, middle-income country, fewer tigers, but their populations are increasing. Americas, Europe, loads of wolves, doing well, increasing. But that is economic growth, okay? Economic growth is going from having 20,000 lions to 4,000 tigers, okay? That is capitalism at work. That is, going from what was a healthy population. Do you think there were 4,000 tigers before Imperial India and Imperial Britain? No, there were hundreds of thousands of tigers, okay? But, it was it was the Imperial Indian Raj, and then followed by the English coming in and taking over and shooting thousands of tigers. And that's why tigers are in such a dire situation, okay? And yes, their numbers are increasing now because it's economically viable to not kill them, but, it's capitalism who got them where they are now, okay? It's ridiculous. And yeah, so this is their argument. And they say, because wolves live in rich countries, tigers live in middle-income countries, and lions live in poor countries. Now, I want to point out that the 10 poorest countries in this world run under capitalist systems. In fact, almost all countries in this world run under capitalist systems. So you can't sort of say, capitalism is great because look at America, they've got an increasing wolf population. Britain and, rewilding of beavers. That means capitalism's great because rich countries. No, everyone is running under a capitalist system. The reason that we are rich is because we are exploiting the poor countries, okay? The reason that their populations of endangered animals are decreasing and ours are increasing is because of capitalism. Right, the wealth generated by markets gives us the luxury of being able to shoot animals with cameras rather than guns. I wrote a while back about how Alaska, a state in which the public mind is run by anti-tax Republican businesses, a state which, in the public mind, is run by anti-tax Republican businesses, has seen an almost miraculous recovery in the numbers of previously endangered species, such as eagles, whales, and sea otters. Okay, Alaska is the largest state in the USA. It is 1.7 million kilometers squared. It is larger than California and Texas combined, and also you could throw Montana in there. Okay? It has huge areas of wilderness, huge areas where, people don't go there. They don't go there to shoot animals. So, of course, things are doing well there, okay? Because they're bigger, because they've got all that space. And, as I said, they're not shooting their animals because they don't need to. They don't need to clear all that space to put in so much industry like they do in poorer countries. So, of course, that's not a problem. This idea of not shooting things because they are worth more alive. We have the luxury of shooting things with cameras, not guns. It's like, yeah, but, having that as a foundation for conservation is bad. Saying, the service is, look, we can take pictures of them. That is wrong. We shouldn't be saying, no, we need to protect species because they're worth money to us. No, that is not a foundation, because as soon as it becomes more profitable to kill them again, we're going to start killing them again. Okay, so that's really bad. Okay, and then it just continues with this nonsense about, you breathe cleaner air and drink cleaner water in Washington, D.C. than in Windhoek, Namibia and Wuhan, China. Why? Because Washington is a wealthier city. Yes, but all three of those cities are capitalists. They're all run by capitalists. And it's dirty air in China and Namibia because they are trying to industrialize. They are trying to be like America. And that is not good for the environment. You could argue the toss about, is that a good thing? I think arguably, what really matters is, that your people are healthy and happy, and that your environment is healthy and happy, and everyone has food and shelter and all of that stuff. Really industrializing and consumerizing is just, ugh. So, okay, and now here we go into, now this is why socialism is bad. So we've sort of talked about capitalist countries, and I've pointed out that they're all pretty bad. Okay, yes, that poor countries capitalist as well as rich countries. But here we go. It was Karl Marx who taught that nature was a resource to be exploited. Okay, so no. Okay, yes, he did say that. Okay, I mean, I think he did. I don't know. I identify as a socialist, but I have never actually read any of Karl Marx's work. But at the same time, I identify as an evolutionist, and I've never read The Origin of Species. You don't have to read the original text to get the gist of a main theory or ideology. But, yes, Karl Marx said nature was a resource to be exploited. Let's just assume that he did. So did everyone. It was the Victorian era. The whole idea was that you would exploit nature because it was endless, it was infinite. The seas could be fished to within... There was no within an inch of its life because there was just endless fish. We didn't know how deep the seas were, so of course we could keep fishing things. So, this idea that we can just say, Karl Marx, and then, this doctrine profound, brutal realization in the smokestack industries of the Comic-Con states. Communism turned Lake Baikal into a sewer and the Aral Sea into a desert. Yeah, and just goes on, blah, blah, blah. Loads and loads of rubbish things that communism did. And yeah, they're right, okay? Let's not be wrong here. I'm no tanky, all right? Firstly, I'm not the biggest fan of Karl Marx. Secondly, I'm certainly not a big fan of, communist Russia and China. Mao's Great Leap Forward destroyed loads of stuff, okay? And same with all the Stalin stuff in the Aral Sea and Lake Baikal and all of that, But why were they doing that? Because they wanted to catch up with the big boy. They wanted to be like America. They wanted to be like the big capitalist nation. It was all about, it's communism versus capitalism. We've got to keep up. We've got to make as many nukes. We've got to industrialize as quickly. And these were third world nations trying to get up to the level of a first world nation that had years and years of imperialism to get to where it was. So, of course, they were going to take shortcuts and destroy their environment. But, I don't think blaming communism is particularly fair here because it's like, these were communist nations trying to be capitalist. And, China and Russia now are very capitalist. So I think trying to say that this is communism's fault, it's bad management, yes, and it's a communist country trying to become a capitalist one, really, trying to become rich like a capitalist one with its system, and it doesn't work. But... okay, so then they want to compare it to North Korea because they're like, surviving socialist enclaves such as North Korea. Okay, firstly, North Korea is not socialist. You can argue the toss about communist Russia, but North Korea is the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, and they're not democratic either. So what's in their name? National Socialists. Blech. Okay, so let's bring up another socialist country, one they don't mention, Venezuela. Now I don't agree with the Venezuelan government completely. I don't agree that some imperialists should be able to cause a coup by charging in and saying, let me give you oil resources to America. That's not right either. But, I don't completely agree with Venezuela's government. But I can give Venezuela some stuff. Okay, so it's one of the top 10 most biodiverse nations, South America. That's pretty standard. Okay, in the world, 10% of areas are protected areas, right? In some form, okay? In South America, 21% of areas are classified as protected areas. In Venezuela, 70% of all land is part of a protected area of some sort, okay? Now, they might not regulate that particularly well, but, okay, this idea that, communist countries, they're all terrible at this, okay? Venezuela is better than most of its capitalist neighbours, okay? It outranks pretty much everyone else in South America with regards to protecting its environment. Now, I'm not saying that means we should all switch to communism because that's going to suddenly make sure that 70% of our areas are protected. I'm just saying you can't just drag up one example that makes your argument look good when, Venezuela and, all these countries, they don't show that case. So, no, I think this is it. And I think part of what Venezuela's advantage is that I don't think they try to reach this thing. It's the same with Cuba. They are countries that don't try to get to the level of America. They're not things like, we need to aspire to be like the West. No, they don't. They just like, okay, well, we'll try to make sure everyone has enough food and shelter. And you can say they haven't done a particularly good job of that, but okay, by not appealing to trying to, catch up with the rest of the world, haven't destroyed their rainforest, have they? So, and then it just goes on about, and then they bring up some old missionary hymn, every prospect pleases and only man is vile. Yeah, it's a sort of a naturalistic fallacy. This article is full of fallacies, and then they have the gall to bring up their own fallacy. Anyway, here we go. But as the new market orchid reminds us, human intervention can actually boost biodiversity. Does it though? There would be more orchids in Britain if we weren't here, okay? If none of us were here, if we didn't have a race course there would be more orchids because it would just be natural, and there would be bison, there would be horses, aurochses, moose, reindeer, churning up the soil, doing all the good stuff for the orchids, right? Okay? So to say that, you need humans because we're putting the horses there. No, look. The horses would have been there anyway, okay? It's just because we're here, because capitalism is here, that means that the horses are there for our own entertainment, and not nearly as many horses there should be. Okay? And then here's some more examples. Those New England woods that people come and gawp at, those are the product of rewilding that happened when canny Yankee farmers abandoned their stony plots for richer land in the Midwest. So you've got two things here. One, you've got this idea of, these farmers, they, abandoned their plots and moved west. Okay? But those forests that have since been rewilded are not really rewilded because you know what they're missing? Woodland caribou. They're missing the eastern mountain lion, which I think is extinct now. Okay, because those farmers came in and shot them all, right? So actually, yeah. Oh, it's all really nice and rewilding. But if those bleeding farmers hadn't been there in the first place, those forests would all still be there with all the fauna intact. You know, you don't have to rewild if things are already wild. And also, this idea, oh yeah, they moved off for cleaner pastures in the Midwest. Oh, great! So now they've destroyed the forests in the eastern United States, and now they're going west to destroy the grasslands, the bison and the rabbits or whatever, are living on. So it's just like, oh great, that's 2 ecosystems spoiled. Brilliant. And now we've got this other problem that, the whole green belt in America is a load of rubbish because the soil's all denatured because of the crappy agricultural practices of these so-called heroes who rewilded the eastern United States. Oh, it's so dumb. And then genetic modification has taken the process much further, allowing us to get more yield from less land and freeing up more acreage. Now, I'm not heavily opposed to GM food. I think it can actually be a really good force for good. It's not always done well, but, it can be okay. But, okay, that is not actually the best approach. Best approach is actually forest gardening. It's permaculture. It's having the forest still there and just harvesting what's there. If you have what is essentially a 7-tiered system, you're growing things at each different level, that is so much more productive than the most genetically modified super wheat you can imagine, and it provides a much greater diversity of food, so you can localize your production and produce enough food for you without having to trade it with other people, and therefore, boom, you've gotten rid of the whole need for all this international trade capitalism as well. So yeah, they are just trying to sort of excuse what's happening. And it's like, yeah, freeing up more acreage. Yes, freeing up more acreage that was previously destroyed by capitalism and our constant need for more stuff and food. So let's just wrap this up. But the real breakthrough will come when lab production makes needless the vast spaces dedicated to feeding grain and pasture. So now we're going to get into what I call, what is referred to as bright green environmentalism. So there's 3 types of environmentalism. There's dim green. There's light green environmentalism, which is everyone just needs to take their part. If we all just ate a little bit less meat, went on a few less flights, a few less car journeys, recycled a bit more, used a bit less plastic, everything will be fine. And to an extent, there's elements of truth in that. And then dark green environmentalists. That's that's me and my lads. It's all like, oh yeah, we want to sort of change the world. We want to get rid of capitalism. We want to actually make the great societal changes that need to happen. And then you've got your middle of the road people. Well, not really middle of the road. They're sort of a different side. They're sort of a third quadrant. Okay, bright green environmentalists. They say, you know what? We could just sit back, wait, relax, because your boys Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are going to sort it out. They're going to create the technology we need to make the world a better place. So, just sit back, enjoy the ride, and hopefully climate change won't kill us all before they manage to develop the technology we need. And it's like, this is so bad. And, that technology is not going to be available for everyone under capitalism, is it? It's really bad. Built-in obsolescence, okay? Think about light bulbs, okay? For decades, light bulbs were deliberately built so they would break. iPhones today, same sort of thing. That is innovation under capitalism. And bright green ecology and environmentalism is not going to work in this economic system because there is no encouragement to make these things work, really. And then their final little thing. The world is getting richer, wilder, and more diverse, all thanks to capitalism. And as it goes, the world is getting richer. Impossible, because money is a human concept. We've invented it basically, and how are we getting richer? We are using resources. We're wasting resources. If anything, the world is getting less rich in resources, and inequality is getting greater. Wilder? No, it isn't. No, I mean, some species have bounced back because of conservation, but the vast majority are still dying out, and more diverse. So everything's just evolving? Everything's just evolving quickly now? No, it's not becoming more diverse because species are dying, okay? So things are becoming less biodiverse, okay? So the only way that things will become more diverse is if we invented more species, which I suppose they might be implying with genetic modification and cloning of extinct species, but that's not going to happen at the rate we're killing things. I can tell you that for sure. All thanks to capitalism. Yes, it's getting poorer, less wild, and certainly less diverse, all thanks to capitalism. So, that was a nice little article. This video has gone on for 35, almost 36 minutes, but I think I'll call it a day there and say capitalism sucks.